Good. That's
I'm
fine.
just making sure. Yeah. Okay.
Sacrifice. I'm willing to take.
Okay, we're
I
live.
can hear everybody good. I just making sure it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to have. You still have to talk.
Right.
Get it super close. Best way to hold it like this. All right.
All right. So we're live.
We're getting there. We're live.
No, I
We're
just
live.
said we're live. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right, guys, get in. Warm up. About 15 seconds. I'm gonna drop an intro, and then we're gonna do this.
Okay. Let's do it. I waited a long time for this day.
Getting everybody in. They started getting.
Yeah.
Hey, can y'all share it? South Mississippi, North Mississippi, Alabama, the United States.
Yeah. Whoever.
Anybody that knows the Justin, everybody share it. Mom, share it.
Yep.
I shared it earlier today to everybody. I told them to get on time.
All right. Music up loud.
Magnolia Room Speakeasy, Airbnb Bosses, Drinx, shout out to John, Direct Auto, go see Michael West, Collision Depot, they will fix and repair to the highest standard. The District Coffee Company, downtown Ocean Springs, and the new location, Pascagoula.
We offer home, auto, commercial, builders, rips, and life insurance. All for shots insurance.
Welcome to this. Going to be an amazing podcast tonight. I'm going to let you, Justin. We got your guest in here. I want to state who you are, Justin, and Beau, and then introduce Ron.
Okay. My name is Justin McPhail. I'm from North Mississippi, from a little town called Grenada. This is my son, Beau, sitting next to me right here.
I'm Beau.
All right. Little quick history here. Beau and I have been through quite a bit. So in 2018, at the age of 12, Beau was 12. I was 43. I was put in jail by a chancery court judge in North Mississippi, and I spent 6 years and 1 month there. Okay. Ron Palmer. What? Can they see Ron on the right?
Yeah, they can see Ron.
Okay. The guy on the right with the blue background is Ronald Palmer. It's the guy that I met while I was in jail, who is the reason I'm sitting here right now. He helped me get out of jail. Beau and I made contact with him. So Ron is he has a website called Fixed Family Courts, and he's a constitutional scholar, and he's been a friend of mine for a couple of years now, and together we got me out of jail. So I don't know what else to add. What would you add to that, Jordan?
So, guys, we're having this podcast. Brandon Bailey was the best man at his wedding. He remodeled your house. Brandon Bailey is the mayor of Latimer. Everybody should know that. It's on record. He's actually the true mayor of Latimer. I think just getting into let's start from the beginning of how'd you get in this situation?
Okay, well, so my wife and I divorced in 2012, and roughly 3 years later, she filed a suit to change custody. I had joint legal and physical custody of Beau. He's our only son, and so everything was going rather well. At the time, they filed for a change of custody. Really, I think they wanted full custody. They did not want me to have custody, and I fought that. I didn't think,
Did you try to do a little joint? Were you okay with joint at the time?
I was fine with the custody. I had custody of Beau for a week, and then she had custody of Beau for a week. He was doing well. He had A's and B's in school, and was really bright, outgoing child. He didn't have any. I mean, we were doing. He was doing better under the joint custody situation than he had before we were even divorced. So it was a good thing for Beau. And so they came after my custody, and I just told them no, I wouldn't give it up, So for 3 years we fought that. I fought that in family court, in the Grenada County Chancery Court, family court, and they couldn't. After 3 years, they couldn't find a reason to change the custody, so they decided to hold me in contempt, put me in jail for 3 years. for 6 years to change the custody effectively. And
Do you remember when you first got that? How did they serve you and arrest you? How did that come through? Like, do you remember that day?
I went to a contempt hearing. They tried to hold me in contempt. They were going to hold me in contempt. I fell behind on my child support, $1,400. At the time, I had paid in child support for 3 years, and I'd already paid in $25,000 in child support. I'd never been behind before, never been held in contempt for being behind before. And, after fighting the custody battle for 3 years and dealing with 5 or 6 different attorneys who all took my money and didn't do anything, I was just out of money, so I fell behind on my child support 4 months. I went to a contempt hearing to really just to work out a payment plan, try to figure out what to do about it. And I was incarcerated at the contempt hearing.
Ron, are you hearing this, Ron?
Yeah.
What do you think about this situation he just explained?
Well, first of all, child support is all for the state. It's not for the child. The child was fine and being supported just fine. Child support is all about money for the state, and the federal government pays the state for this.
So, Ron, is this common to happen? Have you seen any cases like this before where, 6 years, 1 month? Have you seen cases drawn out this long?
No, this is one for the record books. 6 years is incredible. You got to ask, how is it possible to be in Beau's best interest to lose his father for 6 years? How is that even remotely possible? It's absurd. They know it's absurd. This isn't about Beau's best interest at all. It never was. It's about money for the state. Actually, the Social Security Administration, through what's called Title 4D, pays the state for collecting child support. Basically, the state acts as a debt collection agency for the federal government.
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but it was no secret that I love my dad, and
You gotta get a little louder.
I hate to interrupt, but it was no secret that I loved my dad and that we had a great relationship the whole time. Everybody knew that we were really close, and I actually would have preferred to live with my dad instead of my mom. And I also made that known, and I think that caused a lot of anger from my mom and her parents as well. But my point is, to add to Ron's comment, there was no way that anyone could have justified putting my dad in jail to my best interest. And I remember the day that he was incarcerated because I was 11 or 12, and I just broke down and started crying because from what I saw, there was 2 or 3 officers putting handcuffs on my dad and taking him down the hall, and I didn't see him for 2 or 3 more years. So,
did you ever? Ron, ain't it the age like 12? Is it the age of 12 where you can make a decision where you can just go?
No,
I had a buddy that did this. DJ, I love you, but DJ is from Knoxville, Tennessee, or Gatlinburg area, and at the time, his dad met his mom. College and Ole Miss. They had a fling. DJ lived with his mom in Tennessee, but at 12 years old, DJ told his dad, "I want to live with you, Dad." And they went to court, and the court said, "You're at the age where you can make your decision." And DJ, to this day, lived with his dad, and his mom actually had to pay child support. So you're right around that age, though. That's what it doesn't make sense about his being incarcerated at a county jail. Like, is that normal for a 12, 13-year-old to say, "I want to go live with my dad," and they have to agree?
Well, every state's different on that, but the absurd part is, would you let a 12-year-old decide not to live with his married parents? I mean, that's just absurd any way you look at it. It's not for the child to say, "I want to live with one parent or the other." It's not for the government to say the child gets to live with one parent or the other. The thing about all this is that your right as a parent and the child's rights to the parent are individual rights. They're private rights. They have nothing whatsoever to do with marriage, and they haven't since the 1970s. And yet they continue to tie them to marriage and punish people for making marital choices that they don't like. It's completely and absurdly unconstitutional. There's just no basis for it whatsoever. Parents make choices for their children, period. As long as they're fit, they make choices. And both parents make choices. Both parents make best choices for their child, even when they disagree. Because the First Amendment protects your right to disagree. Because these are matters of conscience. Child rearing is a matter of conscience. The state has no business getting in. It's like your religion. The state has no business getting involved in your child rearing as long as you're a fit parent and you're not harming the child to, real articulable standards. So, they do a whole lot of things. A whole lot of things are normal. We're operating off of a system that was basically outlawed in the 1970s that's continued to operate because judges are operating it, and they're the only ones that can change it, and they're the ones that get money from it. Half the judges that exist today wouldn't have jobs if it wasn't for child custody. They simply wouldn't have jobs. They're regulating. They're doing what the executive branch of government is supposed to be doing. And when they regulate, they don't hold the regulator to any standard of accountability whatsoever, because that would be, inconvenient for their regulating. If this were regulated by the executive branch, then half the judges would literally be out of jobs. And so they are maintaining this system for their own financial interest, period. That's just all there is to it. This is a totally corrupt, incestuous thing from the judges who are operating this for their own business, and they don't care about hurting children. They don't care at all that they're hurting children, not even a little bit. So, there's just no other way to say it. I'm not one to beat around the bush. I've been doing this a long time, and there's no justification whatsoever for what they're doing. None.
So, Ron, could you give us a little backstory of like who you are and how you got involved?
And so I went through this back in around 2007 in Denton County, Texas. Sherry and I, at the same time, we were best friends. We were raising our children as together, basically as one big family. She had 4, I had 1. All 4, parents were involved, and it was a big, happy, extended family kind of thing. She and I had our own businesses, and we ran the kids around all day to, every event and everything. And the other 2 spouses worked regular jobs. And somewhere along 2007, they decided to team up against us, and both filed divorce and child custody suits and the whole 9 yards. And I managed to fight for my custody and maintained equal custody the entire time through. Never paid child support, never ever did a financial discovery statement. They, how they do discovery and they want to know all your finances. I told them no. And luckily I had an attorney who also told them no. He was a good attorney from my perspective. He wasn't a good attorney for women. But he told them no and raised constitutional issues. And so that's how I learned to do that. Right? And we basically settled because in my situation, she thought she had it all wrapped up. I had an attorney, a female who is now a judge, who just put one of my good friends in jail for 30 days. Evil woman. But she was basically handing my child over to my ex-wife and walking me to the slaughter. And I found a better attorney, one who I found because he was suing my judge's husband. And that meant if I hired him, that she had to recuse and I had to get a different judge. So my ex-wife and her attorney went on vacation for a week, and they came back and everything was changed completely and utterly. And I started slamming them with this constitutional stuff and a hard-nosed attorney who would do the right thing in certain situations. And basically we got a new judge, and she basically gave in and we settled. And 50-50, we had every other day and every other weekend. I lived a block away from the school, and my ex lived within a mile of there. And so we just maintained that situation for the entire time my child was growing up. and that worked out fine. Sherry's situation was a lot harder. Her ex was a lot meaner and nastier, and he actually took her kids and ran off to California where he was from. And it took us a lot of fighting to get them back, but we eventually put him in jail and got them back. And he was withholding the children. He was dumb enough to say it on the stand and tell the judge, yeah, I kept the judge and the child home. Why? Well, he had a baseball game. Well, that put him in jail for a week. And then he did it again, and he was about to go to jail for a long time. And they finally settled, and he stopped all his games. But he did. Sherry's was one of the worst cases that our county had seen ever. It was one for the record books. Now, in my case, they tried to charge me with her attorney's fees and charge it as child support, and I actually appealed that and won. And every attorney in town told me I couldn't do it. I wouldn't win. One of them was a part-time judge. She told me I couldn't win. I did it anyway, and I won. And the reason they said that is because it took money out of their pocket. All of a sudden, their attorney's fees couldn't be charged as child support anymore. It was a regular debt, now the child support debt. So they had a harder time collecting their money. I never paid the money. So we've been fighting ever since. Shortly after that, we decided to write a book. I figured it'd be a little short book. It turned out to be 300 plus pages, and we started this journey, and that was almost 18 years ago now, I think, back in 2007, thereabout. And I thought this was going to be a 3 to 5 year battle. And I have a professional history, business consulting, traveled the country, working with top level people in the largest companies in the world, doing organizational change. And so I knew how to do this. I know how to make this happen. And I thought that it was going to be 3 to 5 years, and it's turned out to be 15. And the system is so corrupt beyond imagination. In every level, it's corrupt. And so it's turned out to be a very brutal, hard fight. But we've got, I think, the nut cracked now. It's just a matter of time before we get this thing undone. And basically, when you get divorced, the only thing you'll be fighting over is what half of the time you're going to have the child. It's not going to be if she gets the child, you don't get the child. It's not going to be he pays child support, you get child support. That's absurd. It's going to say you're both parents. You were parents the day before you got divorced. You're parents today, and you're both going to raise your child. There'll be none of this visitation stuff, and you get to see your child on the weekends or whatever. No, you're a parent. You raise your child. You raise your child half the time if you want to raise your child half the time. If the other parent wants to raise the child half the time, then that's what happens. You're both still fit parents. They're individual private rights. They don't have anything to do with your marriage. It just makes it easier when you're married because you're living together, and a lot of things are worked out because of the marriage. But when you're not married, your rights to your child remain exactly the same. It's illegal. It is absolutely, unquestionably illegal what they are doing, punishing you for getting divorced. And they're doing it anyway because they've done it forever, and the judges are in control. And again, they'll lose their jobs, half of them, when this is undone. And I will happily take their jobs from them. I'm monopolizing the time here. You guys got to step in because I will talk all day long.
Yeah, so
I got to tell you.
Well, look, the thing is that we have all the time in the world because this is a live show, and I want your story to be today's still my show.
I may not be able to win, but I can pick a team. Hey,
but Ron, I want to explain yourself situation. So Paige and Cade, or Anthony and Cade, are great friends of mine. And I always have this thing with me and Anthony. We've got started business together, and he's just that friend where you're like, all right, man, if you ask to come on my show, you can't come on. That's one of my rules. I like interviewing people that I want to interview, but Anthony, brought this to my attention, and I got to meet Justin and Beau, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense outside the box. It doesn't make sense because you're like looking at going, wait a minute, he went to jail for 6 years, 1 month, $14 in child support, and he's with his son. And they're a team, they're a duo. And if you go back to his social media, and I did dive in, that's why I got some photos. It's all about Justin's life. You could tell it's all about Beau, from riding go-karts to fishing to family. It's been all about Beau. Now, my question is for you, Ron. Do you see some of these cases where it is more, like you said, it's not about the kid, it's more of like a personal situation. It's more
there are always emotions, right? You got divorced, you're unhappy with the ex, and you know you got lots of pent up emotion. You were married for years, and there's a lot. You know, the divorce doesn't happen overnight. It builds up over time, especially when you have children. It takes a lot. And there's a lot of emotion back and forth. And what happens is the judges capitalize on that for their own personal interest. And they punish you for fighting, but they create the arena and they force you to fight, and they tell you there's going to be a winner and a loser. And so if you don't fight, you're the loser. If you do fight, they blame you for fighting. Right? It's a total scam. It's like gladiator games for these people. And I'll tell you how it makes sense. It's very easy how it makes sense. Beyond all the history and stuff, getting here was a long historical thing. Marriage has been regulated forever. But where we're at right now is the Social Security Administration, and to save money, right, they have this thing called Title 4D, and they pay the states to impose child support and to collect child support. The states get a big payment every quarter based on how much child support they order and how much child support they collect. And it's all about money at this point. And the state wants that money. It's big money. And usually it's the attorney general who gets most of that money. In Texas, where I'm from, the attorney general who fought me in some of my stuff, who knows my name pretty well, who's now the governor, he bragged on video, and we have it somewhere on our website, that 2/3 of his budget as attorney general came directly from Title 4D. 2/3 of the attorney general's budget comes from the federal government.
That's a lot.
Yeah, man. All based on child support. Forcing parents to pay child support. Why? Not for the child's benefit. When you have two parents that both want to raise their child and they're both fit, it's not for the child's benefit. That's just absurd. And there's no way they can make that claim that it is for the child's benefit. It's for the state's financial gain from Social Security. It's that simple. And it is a lot of money. The estimates are over $10 billion every year is generated from this industry. And you look at it, how many attorneys make money going in and fighting these battles. Win or lose, doesn't matter. They get paid. They win some, they lose some. They don't care. There's no win-loss record in family court, and it doesn't matter.
Hey, Ron, real quick on this, guys, if you're listening, you're watching, share this. Yeah, and Heather, we are making drinks.
We are.
Yeah.
This is happening.
That's exactly what's happening.
If we run out of whiskey, it's going to be over.
Yeah. So, but my question with like going towards Justin being sick, guys, if you had tuned in, 6 years, 1 month, Justin was in county jail over his son Beau right here. Okay, right here. From what I pulled up personally for myself, great father, great son duo, best friends, respect. So from Justin being 6 years, what's your like? What the case by? Is there guys like been 2 years? How far distance of what Justin went through at the county jail? And he has no misdemeanor, no felony. These are things that like kind of confuse me. Do you have another person you can compete with?
Yeah, he's by far set a record, right? Usually people are in jail for a couple of months at most. But there were 3 issues there. Number one, they wanted him to prove his fitness as a parent. Right? The federal constitution says he does not have to prove his fitness as a parent. The state has to presume he's fit and presume he's making best interest choices. They throw that out the window because they're judges and they can. So they say, when you get divorced, you have to go see a counselor and let the counselor decide whether or not you're a good parent. That's absurd. You don't have to prove you're a good parent. The state has to prove you're not. And that's how our system works, right? State brings charges and then they prove you're guilty of those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, they haven't done any of that. They don't have to do any of that because the judges are in on the game. The judges have this game completely and utterly rigged for themselves. So that's number one. That's your First Amendment right, not to have to speak against yourself, right? And they wanted him to go in there and give all this testimony to a doctor who's then going to use it in the court. And guess what? You're giving all this testimony. Your attorney's not allowed to be there to protect you. And if you don't speak, they throw you in jail. So you got to go give all this testimony to a doctor, and then the doctor turns around and uses it against you with the judge, gives it directly to the judge. Judge reads it. There's no, there's no testimony, this, that, and the other. That's all, if there is any, and usually there's not. But if there is, that's all just for show, because the judge reads all this directly. They talk to these people behind the scenes routinely. They know what's going on. This is all rigged before they get there, and they tell you it's rigged before they get there. What is the standard they apply? The best interest of the child. Well, what's the best interest of the child? That's the judge's viewpoint, whatever it's going to be. Are you going to get to adjudicate your rights? No. You go to courts. The court's duty is to adjudicate your rights. There's no adjudication in family law. The judge decides what's best for the child, and the judge takes away your fundamental rights based on that. That's predetermined outcomes. And that's what Social Security is paying for. Predetermined outcomes from judges. That's rigged. That's illegal. They know this. They're doing it anyway.
When you walk into the courtroom, the judge already knows what he's going to do. That's
so
the whole idea of impartiality goes out the window from the beginning. I mean, they're co-opted by the legislature basically to decide against you ahead of time. So there is no judicial action. There's nothing judicial about it. It's strictly an administrative, regulatory proceeding. Would you say that, Ron?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we filed in Beau's suit. And Beau has filed federal suit and saying that this court never had standing to litigate my interest. And it's required before judges can act. Courts don't have broad authority where they can just go do whatever they want. They only can act where they have standing and subject matter jurisdiction. That means you bring a case to them. There's something that judges can resolve. There's a legitimate conflict, and you can adjudicate that conflict. Well, that requires standing. And when we talk about the child's best interest and child support, which is technically for the child's right, not the other parent's right, then the child has to prove their standing, or the parent has to prove standing for the child. It's called vicarious standing. But there's none of that. So there's no legal authority for the judges to act judicially. None. That is their basic authority to exist and to act as judges as a court. And without that, they don't exist as a court. They're a judge, an attorney in a robe sitting on a big desk pretending to have authority because he doesn't have authority.
So real quick, Ron, on this, I want to take it back to Justin real quick. So let's go into your first, let's say 3 months. Did anybody hear you out? I mean, how was that first 3 months of you being incarcerated?
The first 3 months. I don't know. I think it's like being on a boat drifting out away from the beach, watching your family and your past and your entire life get further and further away from you. But you can't do anything about it. I mean, you can barely reach out to anybody, and the people that you do won't listen to you because they think you're wrong. I mean, the whole thing is set up to make you look, to stigmatize you and put you in a position where no one will listen to you. So it's I don't know what you mean by what was it like, but it's like it's terror.
Well, but at the time, so my thing is like the 3 months you're like, hold up, this is going from a joint custody to landing here now with, like Ryan was saying, like it was, you already knew when you got there. They're like, you already knew you're going. Like they're locking you up.
They handcuff me. I know I'm going to jail. Yes.
So did you ever think like you're going to get out soon? Like,
sure I did. Yeah. I struggled. I mean, I was actually locked up for $1,400 in past due child support for refusing to give the judge a name of a psychologist that he could choose from to have me evaluated, and for refusing a drug test. All right, those 3 things. The thing is that the case had been going on for 3 years, and none of these things had come up before. And it was like all of a sudden at the last minute, they couldn't find a way to change the custody. So they started trumping up all these charges against me. The psychological evaluation was motioned for by her attorney, like Ron says, simply to create evidence to use against me. And I knew that. I mean, it was at a point where I understood that they were simply trying to set me up. So I had 2 choices. I could refuse these tests and go to jail, or I could take these tests and they were going to manufacture evidence that they needed to change the custody. And I just said, I'm not doing that. You shall not pass. I'm not going down that road where If I'm going to make my stand, I'm going to make it right here. If you put me in jail, that's fine. I know it's illegal. I know I got a right to refuse these things, and I'm not going to make my stand from some mental institution that you put me into because you get to a point where you realize that you're going down a rabbit hole the more you try to do. I mean, and when you go into family court, up is down and down is up. So you go in thinking, I'm a good dude. I'm a good father. All these things are going to be counted in your favor. And you begin to realize at some point that no matter what you do, they're going to use it against you. And so you just cut it off and you say, I'm not doing this anymore. Parenthood is a gift. It's defined as natural law. It's been identified by our Supreme Court and by our Constitution. And you should never give it up for anybody. So you just have to tell them you're not going to do that. So they put me in jail. So, but yes, I thought I would get out at some point. And then as time went by, I realized, that
The key's thrown away.
well, yeah, I mean, you just get to the point where, because people say, well, you'll get out someday. I mean, they can't hold you forever. Well, guess what? If they can hold you for a year with no excuse, they can hold you for 10 years with no excuse. And, my incarceration lasted from 2018 to 2024. In 2023, the Grenada County Sheriff told me that he talked to the judge and that if I didn't take that psychological evaluation, I'd be in jail for 5 more years. They plan on keeping me forever. I'm just telling you, or, that was if somebody would take you away from your family for no reason for 5 years, where do you draw the line? I mean, what this is.
Beau, so let's go to Beau. Beau, on your situation, when did you start realizing your dad's not coming home? When did it sit in for you?
Well, I was really young. I was 11 or 12, so I didn't really know exactly what was going on. All I knew was officers took my dad in handcuffs out of the courtroom, and I was crying, and my mom took me home to her house because who else am I going to go with if my dad's in jail, right? That's part of the problem. They put my dad in jail so that my mom could have full custody. So I don't really know what I thought. I knew my dad was in jail. I did not know that it was based on him being held in contempt of court. So I didn't know what any of that meant. I didn't know if he was charged with a sentence or if he was going to be in there for a specified period of time, or I didn't know anything.
When did you start catching, when did you start getting involved with, being, writing letters and getting involved with your dad?
Yeah.
Was it 14, 15? When did you say, enough, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to figure it out?
It was, after my dad went to jail, I got in a lot of trouble at school because my dad was in jail, and
Not having a father figure.
I didn't have a father figure. I was living with my mom. She's a terrible mother. My mother, she's not a good mother. And so I got in trouble at school. I eventually got expelled, to keep a long story short. And I was sent to Elk River. I got expelled right before COVID happened, right? So big shutdown, everything shut down, all the boarding schools, all the places that would accept troubled children shut down, except for Elk River in Alabama. I went to Elk River for around 2 months, I believe. And then one day my mother showed up and told me I was going to French camp. French camp is in Winona. It's a Christian boarding school. It's terrible also. I hated it. Everyone who goes there hates it. After I got out of French camp, I spent my 8th grade year at French camp. I got out, and my 9th grade year, I came back to Grenada High. I was in 9th grade, and that's probably when I started to get involved. I wanted my dad out of jail, and I was finally old enough to start to do things that could help get him out. Nothing that would force the judge to get him out, but I could talk to him. I could tell him all the problems that I was having that I couldn't do before, because I couldn't have contact with him always because I didn't have a phone. And yeah, I did everything I could. You know, we talked every night. We talked anytime we could. And yeah, it just progressed from there.
Yeah. So for, Beau and I talked, he was with me. I had joint legal, look, this is real stuff. I mean, we talk about it. We talk about it all the time when we're it's just us. But this is the lights on now. It's hard to remember. It's hard to remember everybody I was going to call a motherfucker while I was doing this. To be quite honest with you, but it'll come back to me. I feel like if we keep going long enough. But listen to me. But when I had him every other week, and I took him to school. I picked him up. We did homework. So I went to jail, and we didn't basically see each other for almost 3 years. We wrote letters back and forth, and it's just tough. It's hard to motivate people. One of the hardest things about being locked up is keeping somebody like him motivated.
I mean, this is not.
Saying.
Yeah, I know, and I'm sorry. Like I'm just telling you, like bottom of my heart. That's why this podcast was important. Ron, it doesn't make any. Part of my language. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Yeah. Like how this got drawn out and how this went so long, where no misdemeanor, no felony, paid up child support, and it's kind of like a ghost. And then you get to meet Beau and Justin. It's like, I mean, he's a genuine father. It's not like a feel sorry. No, this is a genuine dad that loves his son, and it's just really fucked up. And look, my platform is, it's all over. Like I love the movie Hackers in the 90s. So it's an open platform, but this right here, this is a fucked up justice. Like whatever's going on with this child support situation, especially if they had joint custody at one time, they were working together, spending time. Like I went down the rabbit hole and started seeing, it was always, you never seen a photo of Justin not with Beau. You had blonde hair. That's crazy. You don't have blonde hair anymore.
We
but
look just alike when we were just the same way, dude.
So Ron, can we go back to what was the biggest case besides Justin being 6 years, 1 month? Could you tell me 3 years, 2 years? What was a similar case?
I don't know that I've had a similar case. We've seen jail, but nothing like this. I mean, this is extreme, and I picked up very quickly the relationship between these two and how good a dad he is, and he was in jail because he threatened to upset their apple cart. They know they have no legitimate authority to do what they're doing. He said, "You have no authority to do what you're doing. Prove it." And they said, "No, we're not going to prove it. We're just going to lock you away until you rot, because we have the power. And we don't have any legitimate authority, but we have the power." And that's what they did. Because he stood up for his rights, they locked him away. And this is straight up tyranny. I mean, this is the stuff our founding fathers fought against. This doesn't get any worse than this. And we're supposed to be trusting these judges. They're supposed to be the ones protecting us from tyranny, and they're the ones that are doing it. That's the sad thing about it, is the very people they're supposed to be protecting us are the ones that are doing it. It's disgusting. It really is. But it's going to be overturned. We're going to destroy it. And what I need, my child is long grown. Sherry's children are long grown. So we can't fight directly anymore. But we need parents who are willing and able to fight, who will stand up like Justin did. It's amazing to me that he stood up like that. It's so rare. But when I have parents like that, then I can do what I've learned to do in the last 15 years and how to defeat these courts, how to show that they are without any legitimate authority, and how to do it on their terms and defeat every absurd lie they tell to defend their illegal power. And they have a lot of them. And the reason this happens is because these judges tell lie after lie after lie. And I've heard them all. And we work in all 50 states. We're not like attorneys who only work in the county, one or two counties. We work in all 50 states. And I've heard it in a lot of different state courts. I've heard it from a lot of different judges, a lot of different attorneys, a lot of different family law codes. And they don't have any more lies that they can tell that I don't know how to defeat. And now it's just a matter of getting the right situation to destroy them. And we're going to do that in federal court. by suing the Social Security Administration, and they have no immunity. Part of the problem here is the only person you can sue to challenge the state's family law code is the judge. And the judge has absolute immunity from suit in federal court, so you can't sue the judge. And so you can't challenge the family code. There's no way, no practical, legitimate way for you to directly challenge the family law code in your state and get it declared unconstitutional. Because the only people with the power to do that are the ones that are using it to hurt people. And so what we finally figured out how to do is to sue the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who operates Title 4D, and sue them directly. And we're doing this right now in a federal court in Kansas on the first one. And Kansas is a little better than most places. And the 10th Circuit, the federal appellate circuit there, allows us to sue judges for declaratory relief, to challenge statutes. So we can get in. We're suing the judge and the secretary, and we're about to add the chief judge of that district and the what they call the trustee. They actually, in Kansas, the judges in each district are allowed to set up their own collection agency, hire their own collection agent called a trustee, and they operate it for profit. The statute tells them they operate it for profit into the local county budget. And so they're going through and collecting on child support for profit in front of their own courts. I mean, the guy they hire prosecutes parents in front of them, in front of their court. This guy reports to the judges in the district. And it's complete incestuous system. And they're doing it, but we can challenge that because that's a mistake on their part, because we can sue that trustee. And when the chief judge of the district also manages that trustee, we can sue them for that administrative act versus a judicial act. So that's all in the works there. Part of the problem is the courts are very, very slow with this stuff, right? And they don't want to do it. And half of the judges in the federal courts were once state court judges. And guess what? They did this to people. In California, they've shut us out completely and said the entire Ninth Circuit and the entire en banc court, every one of the judges said, we cannot sue the judges there. We cannot challenge the California Family Code, period, the end. It's not possible to challenge it in their federal court. Now, we've got other ways to get around them, but they slammed the door shut and said there is no way for any parent in California to challenge the family law code in state or federal court, period. They said it's frivolous for you to even think you can challenge the family law code in California. So it's a brutal fight, and we've got that because the judge that we were before in that federal court in the Ninth Circuit, she actually taught best interest and taught judges and attorneys how to hurt people through best interest. It was she advertised it on her curriculum vitae on how she did all this, right? And so they have self-interest. If we win, she's exposed as a fraud and a criminal, and she's a federal court judge, and she's not going to let that happen. And apparently, the entire Ninth Circuit appellate court out in California isn't going to allow it to happen either. But we have at least 11 different circuits in this country in the federal circuit, and they differ, and some of them have different rules than others. And the 10th Circuit that we're in Kansas allows us to sue judges, very clearly allows us to sue judges. So we are going forward there. But also, now that we're suing the Social Security Administration directly, they have no immunity. So that will be heard, and we can challenge the state family code through Social Security, because Social Security actually helps the states enforce their family code, their child support. It literally says in the federal Social Security statute that the Secretary of Health and Human Services is supposed to assist states in collecting child support. They assist them in crafting their child support statutes. They assist them in getting them passed. They certify those child support statutes, and then they directly physically assist the states in enforcing child support. And then they pay the states for enforcing child support. Basically, our argument there is that the Social Security Administration has hired the state to provide predetermined judicial outcomes that are always in the best interest of Social Security than always irreparably injure the child. Because when they deprive the child of rights, like they did to Beau, they irreparably injure the child. That's what the Supreme Court says. I'm not mad. I don't make this stuff up. Supreme Court says that's irreparable injury to the child. And yet they're
Ron,
doing
real
it.
quick. Hey, Ron, real quick. I want to go into like, are y'all cool with this? We got a bunch of comments. People asking questions.
Let's go.
Cade, you want to grab this mic, and I want you to go through some comments.
Okay.
Or Paige.
Wait.
We don't. Here, stand mic. I can't see that before.
We're doing.
Just reading some comments. So, guys, there's a lot of people that ask questions.
Okay.
And so just help me. This is Paige with the microphone in his hand. 'Cause I had a different video up a while ago. And that's why I said long haired friend of Jesus. There were some
He's gonna be
long haired fellas over there were both. And so, it was a
Heather,
different
I
show.
can answer the Drinx question.
The,
Absolutely. We are feeling drinks, and
Let's see.
I'm glad you're having one with us. Let's see.
Let's see. All right. What? He's Ron's asking who's got the microphone in his hand. Paige.
That's Cade.
Paige is he's in the blue shirt with the black jacket.
Okay.
That's Cade. That's Cade putting on
All right, I hear
the
Ron
headphones now.
All right. Yeah, I was all confused earlier because there were all completely different people. And I'm trying to say, none of these people look like Justin. I've never met Justin face to face, but I've seen pictures and I said, this doesn't look anything like
I
Justin.
haven't seen Justin
Well.
since I was probably 9 years old, probably younger. So
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Nothing like cousins.
Nothing like cousins. Beau and I are lucky. We
lucked out, man. We keep the family close. Let's see.
So while he's doing that, I want to comment on something else right now. We just had another poll where they said that the American people, their faith in the American judiciary has plummeted yet again to all-time low. The people simply don't trust their courts anymore.
Okay, he's talking right now. Ron's talking.
Okay, I can hear you.
I'm sorry, Ron. Go ahead.
So I'm arguing that the reason people don't trust the courts is because there's only two places that most people ever see a judge, and that's in traffic court and that's in family law court. And all the rest of it is what you see on the news, and who the hell knows anything about the Supreme Court? They're just, people on TV every now and then. That means nothing to most people. What means something to most people is the traffic court judge and the family law judge. And when they go into family law, win or lose, they know one thing for certain, that the game is corrupt, that the judge is corrupt, the judge is a crook, and this was rigged from the very moment you set foot in the courtroom. If you don't know that immediately, you know that pretty quickly when you spend any time in a family law court, because it's clear that it's rigged from the very beginning. And so when we look at the American people and say, why do they distrust the judiciary so much? It's not because the Supreme Court rules on abortion or this, that, or the other. Most people, that's far removed from their daily lives. Even abortion activists, that's still removed from most of their daily lives. What most people see is a divorce court judge, a child custody judge who steals their children from them and forces them to pay for the privilege. And they know that's wrong and illegal. They can't prove it, but they know it deep down. And that's why they don't trust courts, because that's what they see. And what they see is pure corruption. And it is pure corruption. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's pure corruption. I can prove it every which way you can argue it. I can prove it. The problem is getting in a legitimate court to prove it. Right? And as we're finally able to do that, and they make it very hard to get there. The learning curve to get there and be able to do this is staggering. Most attorneys don't have a clue how to do it. Most attorneys don't have.
I've had eight attorneys, and not one attorney has mentioned a constitutional right in any of my paperwork anywhere on the court record at any time. And if you want to see something funny, try to have an attorney bring up your constitutional rights in family court. If you've ever tried to give a cat a bath in a 5-gallon bucket of water, you know what I'm talking about.
Well,
They will
that's
not do
because they get money from that. They make a ton of money in
That's
family
serious,
court,
yeah, they do.
and they
Yeah,
don't
they're
have
not.
to practice.
They're
The,
not
the
going to do it.
attorney's job in family court is not to practice law. It's not to adjudicate your rights. Their job is to inflame the emotions of the judge against the other parent and for you. Period. The end. If they inflame the judge against the other parent, they win. That's why nothing but slander and gamesmanship. There's no legal practice involved in it at all. It's all a scam, every bit of it. And these attorneys make money. And most importantly, the lowest rung of the attorneys, the most incompetent, the least capable attorneys, wind up in family law because that's the only place they can make a living. Because they don't know jack about the law, and they can't win in a real court where there's real adjudication, where the law is actually followed. They just can't. They can't hack it. And I'll challenge any attorney out there. Put me on stage. I'll show you how incompetent you are. Any one of you, from the top all the way down. Please, I've done it before. They don't like arguing with me because I show very clearly how incompetent they are.
So, Justin, I had a question for you. You
Okay.
told me that these judges started to delegate authority to these attorneys, saying you got to please them.
Sure. So my judge, so my judge did that a number of times. He from the time I was placed in jail, he effectively told me that to get out of jail, he redirected me back to my ex-wife's attorney, basically saying whenever I pleased him, I could be released from jail. Then later on, when the psychological evaluation came into play, the judge placed it in the psychologist's hands. He's like, well, when you make the psychologist happy, you can be released from jail. They actually told me that I would have to go back to the psychologist as many times as it took to satisfy him that I was a fit parent and could be released from jail. And, this is something I learned through Ron, of course. I mean, everybody knows these things, but it's different when you hear somebody articulate these things to you. It makes perfect sense. I mean, a judge has a fiduciary duty to his courtroom.
To the Constitution.
Or the Constitution, right. There you go. To the Constitution. He has very special powers. He's elected or appointed or whatever he is, in this case elected, but his powers are for him only. He cannot delegate his authority to somebody else. It's highly illegal for a judge to tell you to please somebody else's attorney to get out of jail and just don't, which is what he said.
Yeah, there's case law all over the place. Even in family law, there's case law saying they can't do these things.
Right. It's just like a joke. They just make it up as they go.
Yeah, well, because who are you going to challenge? What are you going to do? Take it to the judge? The judge is doing it. Well, you going to take it to the appellate court, where every judge on the appellate court was a district court judge before doing the exact same things. So they're not about to say it's illegal because they'd be saying they were criminals.
Right.
That's all the way up. Your state Supreme Court. They're criminals.
I want to give you an example.
It is a crime. It is a federal crime. I'm not joking about this. It's a federal crime, a federal violation of civil rights as a crime, and it is peonage, which is involuntary servitude, which the 13th Amendment makes illegal, which federal law makes a crime, spells it out specifically, and you go right down the list, and that's what they're doing in family law. Peonage, straight up. Indentured servitude. It is a federal crime. And in Kansas, we told the U.S. Attorney's Office, who is defending the Secretary of Health and Human Services, that they need to stop defending the man. They need to start charging him with peonage. And we put it right before the judge. In fact, the judge, the regular judge, took it away from the magistrate, said that we're not even going to bother with the magistrate because this is too serious. They're criminals, straight up.
Just to bring it home for everybody that's Ron knows so much, and some people are not familiar with the court system at all. It's hard to relate to some of the things he's saying, even though every inch of it's true, I can tell you. But to bring it home for people that have been a part of family court, this is what happened to me, and it's obvious on my court record. I don't care if anybody wants to challenge me. they're welcome to, but nobody will because it's truth.
Right.
The custody suit was filed on April 8, 2015, and a hearing was set, the first hearing of the entire custody suit, 2015, 30 days later. And so at this first hearing, she had to produce evidence to support her petition, which vaguely asserted that I was a bad father and the custody should be changed. So 30 days into this, at the first hearing, she had to show up and present evidence that her petition was legitimate. So I hired an attorney, and I was present at the hearing. Her attorney was present at the hearing. And so the courtroom was full of other people that were there for other hearings, of course, and other attorneys. And they did not produce one scrap of evidence to support their petition. And the judge, the same judge I'm still dealing with today, entered a ruling that her petition was dismissed. The entire petition was dismissed. The case was over. It was done. My attorney congratulated me. The entire courtroom heard him say this. And so my attorney followed me out to my vehicle, and we shook hands, and he congratulated me, and I left. Almost a year went by. Almost a year went by. And of course, at that time, I didn't know any of the things that I know now. I just trusted my attorney to handle my business for me. You know, that's what most people do. We're all told to do all of our lives. And so almost a year later, this same attorney that I had retained called me up out of the blue and said that a restraining order had been filed against me to protect Beau from me, you know, to separate us. And I said, what do you mean a restraining order? He said, well, your ex-wife has filed for a restraining order. And so this restraining order had been filed for under the same cause of action that was supposed to have been dismissed at this hearing almost a year ago. So what happened was they got together and held this hearing and told me that my case was dismissed and it was over with and done, to throw me off. And they all knew about it. My attorney had to know about it.
Sounds like some walking tall shit.
Listen to me. And so even then I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what. Eventually I ran out of money and I had to start defending myself. So I became familiar with the court record. Now you can go back and look at my court record and you can see where after that first hearing, no order was ever entered dismissing my case. They told me it was dismissed. The courtroom heard it. I heard it. My attorney told me, but no actual order was ever entered. And so then her attorney began conducting discovery, filing subpoenas and to the tune of 7 or 8 subpoenas to try to get my personal private records. So, you know, in other words, they were conducting discovery, and I didn't make one single entry for that entire year. And then at some point they got all the discovery that they needed, and they just sit back and waited for the right opportunity to file this restraining order. But the whole point is that's fraud. That's criminal fraud. They literally conducted a hearing, you know, told me that it was over and knew what was going on. Does that make any sense?
And that first hearing was the correct way that it should happen. All right.
Yeah.
You have to meet a certain burden before you can sue anybody. It's called a burden of proof. Right. And then there's 2 sources of authority for these family law courts. Number 1 is the civil law, the family code. And number 2 is the judicial equitable authority, where judges can do things under judicial power when there's no state statute that overrides that. Right. And both have individual burdens of proof that you have to prove on each thing you're asking the judge for, each element of relief that you're asking for. You have to independently prove your standing to receive that relief. And here's the thing. It's not the ex-wife who has to prove it. It's Beau. Beau's best interest, not the ex-wife's best interest. What you're litigating, if you're litigating at all, is Beau's best interest and Beau's entitlement to child support. Child support is a direct right of the child, not the other parent, not either parent. Right? And so what they're doing is they're pitting the child against the parents, but they're not requiring the child or anybody else to establish standing either under equity, or civil law to meet that burden. And then they're just moving forward like they have a legitimate court case, and they don't. They never have a legitimate court case. Never.
Sent
Ever.
Beau off to a
In these
camp
cases,
and never
It's
got,
not-
she never received the money. Like she sent him off to the camp. She didn't need the money, right?
Yeah,
Why the fuck? Where'd the money go?
That's another great point. It's after my dad went to jail. Who
They
she
sent
wouldn't get any
Beau
money
off
then.
to basically Camp Shelby, bumfuck, and where'd the money go?
If she needed money so bad, then after he went to jail, she wasn't getting any money. How'd she survive then? She never needed money to begin with. She didn't need the money.
The child's always going to be taken care of. Even if the parents don't do it, the state's going to do it. The child's financial needs are going to be met one way or another. So it's not about the child's needs. It's about protecting the state from having to do it. It's about the state's financial interest in avoiding having to take care of children. That's what this is all about. This is why it's so hard to fight, because it's the state's money they're fighting against. And everybody in the state that works for the state, including the judges, are all working to protect the state from having to pay. And that's straight up. If they cared about the child, then they would care about what happens to the money after the other parent gets it. They don't. They never do. The moment the child support is awarded and collected, they're done. They've met their Title 4D requirement. The state's going to get paid. Everybody's happy. They move forward. They don't care about the kid, not even a little bit. You look in Texas. Texas has been in federal court for over 5 years fighting against federal Constitution minimum standards for children in the care of Texas. Texas refuses to provide minimums, not to income-based standards of care, minimum standards of care to the children in their care. And at the same time, they're holding parents to an income-based standard of care. They are literally saying, child, you're entitled to a percentage of your parents' income as a right to their income. They have to work for you. They are now your slave. The other parent, minimum standards, they're still held to minimum standards, but one parent out of the two is going to be held to an income-based standard of care, and that parent is going to be forced to work. And they don't even try to hide it. That their entire enforcement scheme is designed to force you to work, and that's what's illegal. The 13th Amendment says you cannot be forced to work for the benefit of another person, not even your child. Right? And they're violating it. They're forcing you to work, and they're literally doing it, saying you go get a job. That is straight up illegal. They know it's illegal. It violates federal law. It violates the 13th Amendment. They don't care. Who's going to hold them accountable? The half of federal judges who were once state court judges that did it when they were state court judges? This is the thing.
I see some of the comments are, where is this happening? This was
right.
Back up the line a little bit. I want to be very clear about this. Happened to me in Grenada County, Mississippi, in the Grenada County Chancery Court. That does not mean it's limited to the Grenada County Chancery Court. This happens, in my opinion, this happening in every county and every state across this country every week, or almost every
week. A friend of mine just spent 30 days in jail in Texas for corruption, straight up corruption. They shouldn't have been allowed to do it, but they were.
Sometimes the mothers suffer, sometimes the fathers suffer, but always the children suffer. The child suffers in every, and
exactly.
If any, and don't, I get emotional about this, and it involves me, it's personal, but look, don't feel sorry for me. I want you to be outraged. The emotion you should all feel is outrage. I mean,
Justin's a warrior. You feel sorry for him. Straight up.
This is happening every day, all over the U.S.
Yeah.
But if parents don't fight, Justin fights. Justin is 100% a warrior.
Fighter.
I'm a Marine Corps infantryman. I graduated Marine Corps infantry school on my 18th birthday, so I can speak to this. He's a warrior.
Thank you, Ron. Well, it's
like Ron.
If we just get to what it comes down to is, if you're not going to fight for your kids, what are you going to fight for? I think most people would rather die than lose their children, and so it's ludicrous that criminals get more protection in criminal court than parents get in family court. In family court, you have no protection. It's strictly, and this is it's just hard to describe how crucial it is to our country. It's not affecting some things. This affects everything. And this country can never be great again until this is taken care of. I mean, I don't see how we can worry about things like abortion until we can take care of the kids that are alive. I don't have any opinion to enter about abortion, but I'm saying this is ludicrous. I mean, how can we ask young people to enlist to go overseas and fight and risk their lives for rights that we can't enforce for families here now? So what is left? You know, I was in jail, and I hand wrote many documents. You know, and when you file things in court, one of the kind of the critical issue is proving what rights have been violated. You have to always articulate which rights have been violated. And I was working on that one day, and I said to myself, you know, what rights do I have left? I think is the easier way to approach it. When you get put in jail, you have no rights. You don't have to worry about articulating the rights that have been violated. Which ones haven't been violated is what you are left with.
Yeah. So I want to jump in there real quick. Justin did an amazing job with that. But let me tell you where the rights are violated. Your rights are violated the very instant the petition for child custody is filed. Because from that moment forward, your rights are gone. Your right to adjudicate your rights in front of a judge and to have a burden of proof, gone, out the window. That judge is going to make a best interest determination, which is their opinion, their viewpoint, nothing else. And your rights are gone. The child's rights are gone. Nothing but filing a petition. That's it. And the moment that's done, your rights as a parent are literally terminated. You no longer have rights. You get a license if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you go to jail for 6 years. So when you file that petition, here's what you have to do. That petition says that you have to go and ask the state for permission to speak with your child, to associate with your child, to worship with your child, to share family privacy with your child. You have to ask the state's permission. That's called censorship, straight up. I mean, the Supreme Court's defined it every which way from Sunday, and that censorship every which way is defined. And you have to go ask the government, the state, whether or not you get to be a parent to your child. Why? Because you made a marital choice that the state didn't like. It's a legal marital choice. It's a constitutionally protected marital choice. Your right to divorce is absolutely a fundamental constitutional right protected by the First Amendment. Absolutely, unquestionably. Your right to speak and your right not to speak, your right to associate, your right not to associate are directly protected by the First Amendment. Your right to speak in your marital association, to associate in the marital relationship, directly protected by the First Amendment, fully terminated the minute you divorce. Why? Because they did it for 1,000 years before this, and they just ignored the Supreme Court in the 1970s, when the Supreme Court overturned the bastardy codes, which were exactly this. You had children out of wedlock, we punish you. Well, you get divorced, we punish you. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. They punish the child. And that's what the Supreme Court called it in the bastardy cases. They called it punishing, penalizing the child for the marital choices of the parents. And they said it was illogical, it's unjust, and the state has zero legitimate interest to do it. None. Nothing that they can even remotely base it on. No legitimate interest at all. That means at the lowest standard that's most favorable to the government loses in an office court.
I'm going to read a couple of these comments here. I see one comment coming up here that says the problem is parents don't believe this is happening until it's happening to them. I don't know who made that comment. That was made through the Fixed Family Courts channel, but I can definitely attest to that. And one reason I can attest to that is because I didn't believe it until it was happening to me. Just to be honest with you, we all tend to think that when parents are in family court, you know, these are the things you hear from afar. You hear through social circles or whatever, and you tend to think that it's just easier to think, well, that parent probably deserved it. What did they do? They lose their child, you know, whatever. But it's not. You cannot believe it until you're a part of it. When you walk in the courtroom, up is down, down is up. It's a straight up. It's just extortion. It's just extortion.
Yeah, most of the people that get to us are already impoverished by the time they get to us. Kansas case is one exception to that, where they found us early in their case. And so I'm very hopeful that moves forward. But there's so many things that are out of our control with the courts and parents and all those things. So, Yeah, most of the time when people get to us, they're already impoverished. And I do this for dirt cheap. I did it for nothing for Justin because he was in jail and I was pissed. But I still have to eat. This is my primary way of feeding myself. So I have to charge, something. I don't charge a whole lot, and I don't live very well anymore. I used to travel all over the country as a highly paid consultant and live the good life. I don't do that anymore. I fight this. But most of the time, by the time they get to us, there's nothing left. The courts are designed to impoverish parents, to take all of their money from them, make it impossible for them to fight. That's one of the ways they win, is they simply make it impossible for you to carry on the fight anymore. They destroy you emotionally, financially. And what does that do to our country? Like Justin was saying, how is this country going to be great again when half the parents out there, 40% at least, are getting divorced, going through this, and they're decimating them emotionally, psychically, financially, just ripping them apart and ripping the basic fabric, the family life, ripping it apart and destroying it. There's no way our country can be great under those circumstances. There's just not. The only way we're able to do what we do is because every other country in the world is doing it, and they just happen to be worse than us. But we're not excelling by any means. We're just the least bad.
Yeah.
Justin, I got a question for you.
All right.
When you're ready.
Go ahead.
So 6 years, 1 month. And other than losing a 30-year son's life, it wasn't no Martha Stewart holding cell, was it?
No, it was not a Martha Stewart holding cell. That's when
You want to tell us?
Now it was a nice corner suite. Now don't be.
But you want to, because I looked up to you my whole life. Yeah, you were a success story, and I still look up to you and love you. I'm biased because I'm your first cousin.
Well, I take bias. We accept bias here.
Bias is
And check
accepted.
and MasterCard.
What all did you lose outside of a 30-year son's life? And you want to tell any stories about it? What happened in there?
Well, I think one thing people, first of all, well, I'm not sure where to start exactly. There's just a lot to it, but people need to understand that when you get put in jail, it's like a dog pen. And it's no way to describe it. And every dog that gets arrested goes in the same pen. So if you think that your loved ones are, let's just say you have someone that's in jail and you think you're going to leave them there to teach them a lesson or whatever, or maybe to rehabilitate them. You need to understand that when somebody goes to jail, whether it's for civil contempt or capital murder or rape or whatever the case may be, they all go in the same dog pen with the same people fighting over the same remote control, eating the same food, and struggling for survival together. And so it's not a place to leave somebody in the hopes that they'll be rehabilitated. They're more likely to turn into a criminal than they are to turn away from criminality, for one thing. And so, I think Jordan, on his intro to this podcast tonight, he mentioned that I was shanked while I was in jail, and violence, there's kind of a code among inmates in jail. It's not really something that you talk about when you're out about necessarily particular incidents of violence, because it just is a violent place. And when you put people in a situation like that and turn off their resources, their food, their loved ones, their access to it does things to people, and it does different things to different people, and violence ensues. Most of the violence is reserved for the people that can't be managed any other way, but occasionally it spills over into the rest of the population. So I did have one incident where I had a couple of guys come in my cell and had a parent robbery attempt. I don't know. It was a bad plan, I'll say that. But anyway, one of the guys had a shank, and we had an altercation, which resulted in me going to the emergency room, and I had several lacerations, but one was down the left side of my face, and I could have lost an eye if the guy had been a little luckier and I had been a little slower. I probably would have. So it's instructive because it's just a bad place. It's not somebody, it's not somewhere to put parents that are maybe not good parents, or this is all, am I making any sense here? I don't know. Yeah. It's like, I will say this though, I have a lot of brothers and sisters left that are still incarcerated and that I was incarcerated with, and they were a family to me for 6 years, and I respect all of them. And what I learned is, how they work together. So
It's a family.
Yeah, it's family.
Yeah.
I kind of miss them, to be honest with you.
There were arguments that we didn't make. There were things we didn't do when Justin and I were talking about how to defend him and get him out. And I warned him over and over again, because literally we're talking more than 10 billion with a B every year. These people will kill, and they had him in jail where they could get away with it. And so we were very worried about that. It was a very realistic possibility that he could have been murdered to prevent him from fighting for his rights. That a judge could have had that done, or an attorney general who gets 2/3 of his budget could have had that done, or anybody in the system who doesn't want to be exposed. Supreme Court justices in your state who did this when they were district court judges, who defended all the way up while they're Supreme Court justices, don't want to be exposed as criminals, as heartless, cruel criminals that destroy children. They don't want that exposed. That's going to be a nationwide disgrace when people finally start paying attention to this. It's going to be a huge deal, because it's half the judges out there, easily half the federal judges. Right? It's all the state judges. It's half the federal judges. This is a nationwide travesty of criminals, all wearing robes, and more than $10 billion every year feeding this system that these judges control. That district court judge controls money that they take from parents and from children, and they give to guardians ad litem, to attorneys, to therapists, to you name it, everybody.
It's all
And
garbage.
they control it. So
I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have made it.
Did I get the look? I want to give a shout out to my boys and girls that are in the jailhouse still. I love y'all, and y'all hang in there. If I told you I was coming to get you out, I'm coming to get you out. If I told you I'd be in touch, I'll be in touch. But anyway, it's
we'll do a part 2. Let's go to part 2.
This is going to be a part 2. We're going to take our show on the road.
Okay,
this is for real. If you don't think I'm pissed off, I mean, I get upset, and I know I do. But I've shot before. They took 6 years of my life and my house, but I'm out. So.
Ron, plug get your wife plug y'all's book and how they can contact you if anybody's going through all this similar situation or dealing with the court system. Reach out to Ron and his wife. Y'all got it going on, and
Ron and Sherry are great. They
y'all did this, and with Beau, we'll tell you. I mean, y'all made it happen. This is just disgusting. I don't know what else to say. I don't.
Well, we're gonna shine a light on this. You just take my word for it. This is it's gonna be a part 2 for sure. Not only to this podcast, to the story in general.
No, we're continuing to grow this. So I want to do. You want to say something,
Ron?
Federal suit coming. There's already one federal suit. Already filed federal suit. There's more coming with Justin. We're coming after him. The Secretary of Health and Human Services will be sued in federal court for running a slaving organization in Mississippi, and every one of the judges is going to be held to account for this one way or another. It's going to happen. You see, Justin's a warrior, and we're going to make it happen.
And Ron, I'm going to have you back on the show. This is going to happen. You seem like an amazing person. I've learned a lot about the legal system through you, and you're. So I want to say, guys, reach out, comments, message. If you want to know more about the story, I'll get you in contact with Justin. This is a sad situation.
Listen to me. I want to say one other thing. I don't know. I'm not sure how I was listening, but to anybody who may play this back and listen in the future, your parenthood is not a popularity contest, and I'm not a perfect parent, and it's because of that I know that I don't think anybody is a perfect parent. And so you parents out there that have had DUIs, or you come in late, or this is all bullshit. There's nothing wrong with your kids are better off with you than they are anywhere else in the world. Just believe that.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court of the United States in Sankowski versus Kramer said that parents do not lose their rights just because they're not perfect parents. The United States Supreme Court said those exact words in Santosky versus Kramer a very long time ago, and the state courts simply ignore it.
It's ludicrous to think that you have to be perfect. I mean, who is, for one thing? There was a commercial on television less than 10 years ago that the National Adoption Agency or somebody, it said you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. So you've got adoption agencies trying to put the kids up for adoption on the basis you don't have to be a perfect parent, but you've got family court judges taking kids from people that don't need to lose. It doesn't make any sense.
What the fuck is perfect?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't figured that shit out. I haven't figured it out.
It's all a matter of conscience. All of this parenting
Opinion.
is as matters of conscience. What you believe about religion, about politics, about freedom, about everything that's purely belief and core to who you are, matters of conscience. That's what you put into parenting. That's what you teach your children. That's what the Supreme Court has said parents teach their children, and has said the government can't do it. The government is not capable of doing it. So even when children are in the government's care, they generally try to put them with foster families because the government can't do what parents can do, even foster parents can do, right? And yet, in family court and divorce court, it just doesn't matter. These judges don't care. Their money, they're more interested in their own money and their own jobs than they are about children. It's sad.
Well, I want to say part 2 coming up. Ron, reach out to you. If cheers.
Here's to y'all. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
cheers.
love y'all.
And I also
Ron,
want to
love
drop
you.
this one thing, Ron. This is just because it's a family business, but I'm going to drop this because, guys, if use the code, get the district merch. This is family business. And Ron, I'd love to reach out to you and your wife and learn more and have you on the show. I've learned so much about the system, but it made me disgusted. And guys, like, subscribe. Is your book on Amazon? Is your book out there?
Yeah, we have 4 books. You can get them from our website or from Amazon. 4 books on family law. I have a 5th book that was a training book in the industry I worked in before. But so they're all out there. Go to our website, check it out, get the information that's there. There's a ton of information. We're going through a rewrite with it. But there's over 500 posts in there. Some of them are screwed up just because our technology is so. We've had this site so long, our technology's gotten screwed up, so we need to fix that. But there's a lot out there. The books are out there.
And folks,
Jerry put it all in the chat here so you can see and read it there. You don't even have to replay this. Just look at the chat.
Ron and I have had many discussions about me writing a testimonial for the work that he does and the effect it has on the judges in your courtroom. And I want to tell anybody that's out there listening right now, we never got around to that, and I had forgotten about it until right now. But if you want to see your judge, if you want to see his attitude change, and you want to see the paperwork shaking his hand while he's reading it to you, Ron is the man you need. He's good at this. And, I just can't say enough about him. If anybody out there that is going through what I've been through and cannot get anything, their attorney, they can't get traction in the courtroom, they just feel like they're fighting a losing battle, he is the man that you can bring in that would change this.
Guys, hit us up. Let us know.
I'm just telling you. That's
They're heavily protected, but they are not absolutely protected. And I know how to get in and hurt these judges and take from them, or them taking from children. And it's going to happen. There's no stopping it.
Yeah, sounds good. And we'll literally, Ron, we're going to reach out. I got to pee. Love you guys.
All right, Ron.
All right, take care.
All right,
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Good night.
Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.